How do we?
Problems? Aspirations, beliefs, and realities into account. You'll create experiences, innovations, relationships, and connections that reflect the world in which you work and the communities that you serve, adapting as you go. Make no mistake, this is a long journey, guiding how your business works, leads, and behaves. And it's only just starting for some. But when progress ignites, it's shared. You see, different is normal. Everyone should feel like they belong. By recognizing that, innovating for that, measuring for that, by confronting and responding to the needs of society, you step closer to making the Sustainable Development Goals a reality. And you'll grow your business for the better. This is about a future where everyone counts. It's about being humanity-centered, innovating for the planet, and every human on it. It's an opportunity to put diversity and inclusion at the heart of everything you do. An opportunity that your business depends on. If you don't do this, you'll be left behind. So how do you ensure you're a part of that future? The answer is in our name.
Thank you to design it for this fantastic film. I love it. Clearly cannot be said. Must say, isn't this worth it? Give it a hand first for today. Come on. It's good to feel that you're clapping. You should clap more. First, heartily welcome everybody who came here and all who follow us digitally. We're 1,100 people who follow this conference. It's so interesting that I want to attend. And let me start with myself. My name is Lisbeth Setestori. As it says, I work with diversity, inclusion, culture, communication, leadership for companies to help them to improve in that field. I worked several years for a mentoring program for highly educated immigrants with 1 or 2 masters, maybe even a PhD, to try to help them get good jobs here, that the doctor should be able to work as a doctor and not clean floors. Some of my learning points through my years working with diversity inclusion is shortly to make a summary. Be open, be curious, be conscious on the fact that we are different, because that's the normal thing. And diversity includes, it's not only ethnicity, age, gender, LGBTQ, religion, etc. that we hear about. Diversity is even digital competence, socio-economical assumptions, never diversity, and variation in functioning, and much, much more. Diversity is basically everything, all our differences, both the visible and the invisible. And the concepts, diversity, inclusion, or equality included, is hotter than ever. Make a simple search on Google, and there are 4,820,000 results just on that word in Norwegian sites. Diversity, we speak about 4.5 billion results. This is hot. Haven't almost not been a conference within this subject, but not linked to strategic inclusive design. And even as important as a framework for recruitment, diversity of leadership, culture building, is design of user-friendly and universally designed products and solutions for the market. That contributes to innovation and the competitive force. Often we see that this discussion can become a little fragmented. They don't really hang together, but maybe we should lift this concept out and up to really bring out the potential for what it represents, both for reputation and profit. And then, my friends, we need both company leaders, design leaders, to ensure complete, comprehensive strategies on these areas. We have to increase the consciousness and work together. And therefore, we are here today. And now you will soon hear a lot of good reports. I can promise you, I've listened to them already, secretly. And these are the ones who really work in this field. But to begin with, our Ministry of Culture and Equality, Anette Trettebergstuen, has sent us a little video. And I think we can start with that. Please turn the film, as I said. Sound. Say hello to the person next to you if you didn't do it. And use the free time.
Alle sammen. Det inspirerende at dere over 900 fagfolk og interesserte
There are 900 participants in this conference.
Temaet for dagen grunnleggende. Hvem vi
So the
utformer
subject,
omgivelsene for?
who are we
Mitt svar
designing
at vi skal
an
gjøre det
environment
for
for?
alle.
Our answer,
Vi
we should
skal
do it for
planlegge
everybody.
omgivelser som
We should
bygger opp
create
om mangfold,
environments
inkludering, likeverd og
that
likestilling.
that
Alle
frame equality,
skal oppleve
diversity.
omgivelsene som positive
Everybody
og
should
inkluderende.
experience
Og det
their
nettopp det
environment as
universell
positive and
utforming
inclusive.
handler om.
And this is what universal
På
design
mange
is about.
områder må vi tenke
In many
nytt
fields,
fremover. Vi må
we have
blant
to
annet
think,
tilrettelegge for at
we have to
flere kan
prepare
leve gode liv i
for
egne hjem.
everybody
Og da
could
trenger vi
lead good
boliger
lives.
som praktiske å bo i,
We
med
need
tekniske
houses
utstyr som gir
that
trygghet
are
og
practical.
assistanse i hverdagen.
And we need
Vi må
some
ha
effort in everyday
hensiktsmessig
life.
kollektivtransport,
We
gode
have
nærmiljøer og
sports,
digitale
good
omgivelser som
environments,
inkluderer, ikke utestenger.
neighborhoods,
For å
and
få til det her, så
good
trenger vi
digital solution.
kreative hoder
To make
som
this happen, we
utvikler
need
løsningene for
creative heads
fremtiden.
who
Vi skal
use
gjøre
the
vårt.
solutions. We
Regjeringen
will do
legger fram en
our bit.
stortingsmelding med en
Our government has
kommunereform
presented a
som
parliament
beskriver
report
utfordringene
that
og
describes
peker ut veien
design
Vi
and
setter
points
også
to the
arkitekturpolitikken
way
høyt
ahead.
på dagsordenen igjen.
Also, we have
Vi trenger en
architecture
målrettet
high
og
on the list.
helhetlig
We
nasjonal
need
politikk på det området her, som bidrar til
directed
gode
national
og
policy and
inkluderende
contribute
omgivelser
to
for alle.
good and universal
Jeg optimistisk.
environment for everybody. I'm
Sammen
an optimist.
så skal vi
Together
finne de gode
we will find
løsningene.
the good
Lykke
solutions.
til med dagens
I wish you
seminar.
luck with the conference today. We thank you, Minister for Culture and Equality. Is that Minister of Culture and the Ministry who coordinate universal design. Now we will soon present the first lecture, but before that I would like to thank Norwegian designers and Ixta for cooperation in this conference. And I would like to start with presenting the two senior consultants that actually stand behind this conference today that have collected 1,100 participants. So Jannike Hølen, please, and Knut Bang, who are the leaders of Dogma Includes Program for Everybody. Just 1 second. Come up to me. Jannike. I think we can start with demystification of this concept, universal design. Yes, let's start with that. Inclusive design is in the design perspective, universal design. And that's somebody called it design for everybody, design for many. It's what is about is to ensure perspectives and to collect experience from real people, both in developing product, digital solution, graphic design, and not only safe environments. Knut, do you have anything to add? I should have a good answer to this, but the important things with inclusion is that we base this on insight, not on prejudice. And if you base on real insight, you get services that are more inclusive, that are user-friendly, and the result of that you get products that we can take paid for. So it's profitable, in other words. What do you think? What's the background? Why did you want to have this subject and this conference? What was your goal, target? We have laws, we are Norwegian, international laws and rules for universal design. We have it for equality, against discrimination, but every day we see solutions in the market that actually exclude people. So what I hope for is that we all should leave this conference with even greater consciousness to work more comprehensive, both with diversity, availability, both through developing services and products. One of the jobs that Duga does is to connect design, to connect design and architecture against the business life and the public sector. And what you want to do today is to lift out design business and architecture business, we have a very high level regarding inclusive design and architecture, and they are represented in all phases of design, all phases of architecture, so lift out that great competence. We know that many of you are in this room today, and you have inspired us to get it up and out, so thank you, and thank you. I think it's great that the two that have organized all this were able to show themselves. Give them a hand. We will run this conference without a break until 16:45. And it can be a long time without a break. So if somebody has to go to the toilet, there are toilets in there. I had to actually take a photo. Great toilets. And plus there are toilets at the end of the room, at the entrance. So here there's some steps up. At the entrance, you can roll in. And then the emergency exit. If you need translation, headsets. So I can turn to Norwegian. In case of fire, there's emergency at each side, end of the room. So now we can start with the fun. Are there any here who has struggled with get the plug into the socket, or somebody didn't struggle with that? I had both 1 and 2, and several times got irritated because of that challenge. But our first lecture, he has solved this problem, and he was early up with the problems and different issues, find good solutions. And he was just a young student when he designed this socket flow. I have to show it to you. I think it's a genius. So said the jury, and they said, why didn't anybody think of this before? So it's almost connects by itself. It's 10 years since he was on this stage and got Doga's very high price young talents, particularly for that socket. It's fun fact, as fun fact is actually in the National Museum and the permanent part. But this man, he knows so much more than designing sockets. He has designed high technological aerodynamic sled that he plans to make a world record. And speaking about speed, he has been the chief designer for the world's fastest Lamborghini model. Sky is not the limit. He's Norway's first astronaut candidate. Take that, and in those days he's constructing his own space project with 7 candidates, 4 of them in wheelchair and 1 has a leg prosthesis. The others are functionally healthy. This is fantastic. We can say that this man is aiming towards the stars, and he will lift this concept, inclusive design, into space. But he has his legs on the Earth. He works with product design, innovation. He landed with NOAA Consulting just before Christmas, after having been several years in a company design it. Now we will listen to what he's thinking about inclusive design, why it's necessary, and which limits it can move. Join the journey of Nima Shahinian. That was some introduction, thank you. It's warmed my heart to see that so many people gathered here, and I think you'll understand why. So many you believe that I'm very concerned with fast cars. Many believe I'm very concerned with things that fly, noisy, fast, and maybe don't care about my own health that much. There might be something. I like to push the limits, and as mentioned, I'm an astronaut candidate, but many people don't know, apart from my clothes, that my heart is not in fast cars and noisy digits. It lies in inclusive design, universal design. And it has so for a long time. I find something so important in this concept. It's the concept that I love and hate. The fact that we live in a world that we need a known term for inclusive design, and we have to have a seminar, we have to have a conference. But on the other hand, I love that we have this seminar. First, I learned about it when I designed these sockets, electrical socket. 10 years ago, I got the prize for this socket. On this stage, I did this project. As a student, I saw a problem that I solved. Very easy, but most important was not the sum of sale, the thing that I have it on the screen. There's a reason for that. It's not to boast. When I designed this socket, the philosophy that I was left in was an eye-opener regarding what this term was. So it started the philosophy in myself regarding our role in society as designers. You know who this is? It's Vigeland. He who made the statue in the Vigeland Park. Not many people know his picture. We designers, we are form givers, as of tradition. We are problem solver too. I'll get to that. But we became inventors. Think about it. The wise people, they say that we have existed for 200,000 years, human beings, plus minus. Until 5,000 years ago, that is for 195,000 years, we used our legs as the only means of transport. For 195,000 years. But then 5,000 years ago, we discovered we can ride horses, elephants, oyster maybe 5,000 years ago, out of 200,000. Then for 5,000 years, we use animals as a means of transport. Until the last 100 years, we invent electric and steam cars. We move from horse and carry it to Tesla in 100 years. So human development has been flat and then peaked. So last 100 years, there have been a lot of inventions. And I believe, if it's a word, that we now are in a phase where we are such to be improvers. Doesn't mean that we stop inventing, that we shouldn't give form, we should do all these things. But we should even start looking at the world around us and improve things.
Ca 8 milliarder mennesker.
We just turned 8 billion on this planet. Think about it. When Neil Armstrong landed on the moon, we were 2.3 billion. A little more than 50 years ago. Now we're 8 billion. Out of this 8 billion, there are not 2 people who have exactly the same degree of functionality. There isn't. There's not a group that's called reduced function, functions healthy. It doesn't exist. And everybody in this room have some kind of functional variation during the day. some can say that's a very strange thing to say, but to have a variation in function is not always about to lack a leg or to have a spinal problem. Like this person is much more capable than I am. Jesper Saltet Pedersen, but have a variation of function is often self-inflicted through our habits, how we live our lives. In this picture, I see two people with earphones or headsets. They are in reduced function. The 15 minutes because they are one on the subway, because we people we are constructed to discover different sounds, to analyze them. In this case, it's reduced hearing for a short period. If we carry a heavy sack, we cannot move in the way that our bodies are constructed to do. We cannot run away from some danger, earthquake that we just saw in Syria, Turkey. Then we are functional reduced for a short period. I don't even have to comment that picture. And all of us have some experience of having some injury. Then we have a reduced function for a period. So I honestly say that all of us, in different ways, have reduced function or have a variation of functions, either through a day or at least in this scope of life. Also, when we dress in practical clothes, I just had to. We have made ourselves a picture how the perfect person should look like. This is Da Vinci's drawing of the perfect person that doesn't exist among 8 billion. Still, we have designed a world that's not made for real people. It's not made for all these people with functional variation. This is very familiar. So if we have look at the humanity like Samuel Linder, we have some person that have reduced function or are disabled, and we on the other hand the perfect person, as Leonardo called him. If we can create a product that is for both these extreme points, then we have solved everything between. Who tell you that it's not good for business? If I'm going to sell a socket, I don't want this to be a helping measure, because then we are left with the left side. I want to sell a lot of electrical socket also to that woman on the right, and have to design something that is usable for both sides. So even if you don't care for diversity and design, then see the good business profit in it. It's good business. It's not bad business in inclusion. Of course, I will speak about space travel. We now currently design for the most extreme. Space travel is physical, practical, logistical, and intellectual, the most advanced we humans can do. I've been through myself, through practice and space travel. I know what it means. It doesn't become more extreme than that. I can tell you why we do this project that was mentioned, why this means so much for the future of humanity, not up there, but here on Earth. This is myself, a little more than a year ago, before the Ukrainian war. It was me in a space suit. I was practicing. It's no longer on me. Before my astronaut program was announced in the media exactly 1 year ago, we had already for 8-9 months, we had a large Norwegian team. We worked with the project we call Next Step. Next Step was about to recruit, qualified, to train, and shoot up the first person with reduced function or disabled person. There have been 6 people in space through the ages. None of them have lacked as much as a little finger.
som I Next Step.
This is our team. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why I chose these people. There are 4 main arguments why we want to bring universal design to space. Argument number 1, colonization and the ethics around colonization. For all who don't know anything about space travel, we will walk outer our planet. We will establish other places. It will happen. Elon Musk believes before 15 years. I don't believe that, but I believe that before 50 or 100 years. And who should elect the worthy for the next generation? Should we just elect the right stuff or the perfect stuff as in the 60s, 70s? We have to bring with us the diversity of humanity when we move out. But this is far ahead in the future. One thing that's not so far ahead, the space science, there are the rockets today that will take us to Mars within 10 years. I will give you some lecture for those who doesn't know. This is not a real drop. This is from a film. You have to understand the concept. This is the International Space Station. This is where I hopefully will go in 2024. International Space Station is already 23 years and moves in orbit around the Earth, 154 kilometers above the Earth's surface. The International Space Station is so close to the Earth that if I had been injured on this space station, it would take from 3 to 3.5 hours to evacuate me and place me in a modern hospital on the planet Earth. So close is the International Space Station. But when we go to Mars in a few years, Mars is another story, because if we are lucky and Mars are close to us, it takes 3 to 4 years to an expedition to Mars. So the question is, if you don't have systems that are universally designed, that are able to include redistribute resources, what you do if somebody is injured on these travels? Without universal design, it's impossible to explore space other than to this closed space station. And we can discuss, is it worth to spend money going to Mars or not? That's another discussion. But this is happening. And if you go even deeper into space, children will be born a spaceship. This is our fate. It will happen. And not all these children will be born in accordance with what we call the perfect human. Reason number 3 is that space travel is a technology accelerator. The reason why we are into space travel is to accelerate technology. Some technologies from space travel, the smoke alarm, electrical drill, that's space technology. Sneakers with damping, this is space technology. Air thermometer, laptop, space technology. The temper pill, mattress, space travel technology. Insulin pump, space technology. I could continue. Space travel is a field that is used as a technology accelerator. It has always been, it will always be. So what we are able to do in space travel, we will also be able to use here on Earth. And then there's quite a good business, because while we're speaking, there are 4 space stations in the making. These 4 stations are being developed, and they will be launched within 4 years. universal design can be a good business. And if we are able to design complex solution in space, maybe we can solve quite simple challenges on Earth. Most important is that to prepare for revolutionary science or groundbreaking science. And I want to introduce my candidates and why we have them and why universal design is the key for this groundbreaking science. Number one, Kristine Utne. She's educated civil economist. She became paralyzed in a car accident. Sigmund Groven, physiotherapist. He invented this vehicle. Paralyzed after a bicycle accident. Lena Skrøder, born with something in her spine. Has been in wheelchair since birth. Educated doctor, hockey player. Nils Mykleby, pilot, doctor, specialization in radiology, maybe one of Norway's best specialists, among top 100 or 24,000. Terje Sæle, one of the foremost neurochirurgists, and his head doctor of European Space Agency. Trond Hammer, first person who came to Utøya. He fell out of his bike some years. He fell off his bike, became paralyzed. Why is this so important? There are actually two more candidates. I'll show you the last ones. Kjetil Blakstad lost his leg in Afghanistan, did not get compensation, educated for an advocate, specialist in compensation law.
En av våre kandidater.
Prothesis, one of our candidate. And the last person is, of course, myself. The reason why this is important, we're not doing this for like a show. This is important to do. The reason why it's important is that Terje Sæle Nilsen, Nils Mykleby, two our doctors, who are also European Space candidates, they have developed a research project where we, for example, we can use Lena Skrøder because her spine is open. You can employ some sensors in her spine and measure pressure in your head. This is research that the medical world has dreamt about the last 50 years. But if we bring Eva Skrøder here, it cannot look like this, because this is made for the right stuff. Therefore, universal design is the key to bring the kind of people up that can, in the long run, repair spinal damages. And in this connection, we make projects. This is a project that two of our master students have done. Fantastic paper. They have developed some technology, what it takes to bring humans to train full-scale astronauts, but are different from what we're used to in space travel. And this is just some of these examples. So you remember this as somebody who wants instruction how to make an invention and become rich. Stop looking for good ideas. That's the most stupid you can do. Look for challenges, problems. And this pissoir is the first prototype of the socket flow. The socket flow was never an idea. The socket flow was a genuine problem for real people, for real problems. That's why it became a success. And it was tested and developed. And the reason why this is The road is that empathy, inclusion, to have the heart with yourself, would in the end always be the best strategy, both for business, for our planet, and for us humans. That's my philosophy. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Nima. That was very interesting. You will get the short present. I know the designers. Grusøybe Midtun, who made this, is called Lunde after the bird puffin. It's like a can for cream, shaped like a puffin. Now we'll meet two other designers, and a Norwegian, one from the Netherlands. But my Dutch ability is not have a poor function in my Dutch, so I take it in English.
One of Norway's first agencies to take a clear position within strategy, branding, and business design. And as they say, we are in it to make an impact. Their guiding principle is that strategy must lead to action. Nice ideas are nothing unless they get viable. They use their diverse cultural perspectives and broad in-house experience to develop brands that resonate internally and engage externally. Hallgrim Sagen founded the company. He is a strategic designer, has extensive international leadership experience, both in the technology industry. First 11 years in Tandberg, where he got a chance to build Norway's largest in-house design, and then 9 years in Cisco in several positions as manager and director within design, strategy, and design thinking. 4 years ago, he started Stride, which now is Lomi. Growing up with a special education teacher, det vi på norsk kaller spesialpedagog, as a mother, Hallgrim learned the value of inclusion at early age. And the other one, he's the youngest one, Johan Freborg, graduated with a master in strategic design a couple of years ago in the Netherlands and joined Lomi as a strategic designer about a year ago. He grew up in Amsterdam in a family where two different cultures came together, the Dutch and the Japanese. This has taught him to understand the differences between people, their opinions, and view on life. And this fall, they have, in collaboration with Doga, worked on a project developing a framework for strategic inclusive design, as well as a change guide for driving inclusive design in organizations. And this is what we are going to hear about now. So please welcome Hallgrim Sagen and Johan Freborg from Lomi Agency. Skal du videre?
Wow.
Yes. So over the past months, we've been speaking to many designers in different positions in different companies on the topic of inclusive design. And the general conclusion is that everyone would like to do more of this. Some because they experience exclusion themselves all the time. Some because they think making your products inclusive is a minimum requirement for good design. And some, like myself, because we believe that designers have the power, we have the capabilities and the responsibility to contribute to an inclusive society where everyone has equal opportunities, no matter what your story is. But the fact that we want to do inclusive design doesn't mean that we actually get to practice it.
No. To get there, we know that inclusive design needs to provide business value. And done right, it really does. We have many examples of that. Here's an example of a Nike shoe, which was specifically designed for people having difficulties putting their shoes on. So it's a hands-free, slip-on experience. And it shows how inclusive design enabled Nike to do some fabulous product innovation, to reach a bigger market, to improve the user experience, also for sort of their existing customer base. And it generated a lot of brand value. This really enforced Nike's commitment to inclusivity. Still, it doesn't seem to be enough. Despite all these business benefits, only a few companies seem to fully embrace the capacity which lies within inclusive design.
And to find out why that is the case, we talk to those that have a strong influence on decisions like this, design leaders. And talking to them, it became clear that even though inclusive design was on their radar, at the end of the day, there was always 10 other more pressing issues on their priority list, and inclusive design would just not happen. But interestingly, there was something else that was mentioned time after time by these design leaders as a top priority for their organizations right now. And this is all about promoting the representation and participation of various groups of people. It was already introduced a little bit, but programs and policies around this are captured in the term diversity, equity, and inclusion. And DEI, better known in Norwegian as Mangfold og Inkludering, has made it all the way into leadership conversations and into the boardroom because it's now been widely accepted that it's crucial to attract talent, to create environments in which your employees can thrive, and now also more and more customers are choosing organizations committed to DEI over their customers. So this raised the question with us of how does DEI then relate to inclusive design? Because if an organization is committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, their products and services need to be inclusive, right? And we were not the only one to make this connection.
No, we weren't. We were super happy to see this model from Deloitte. Deloitte talks about spheres of influence, and they say that conventionally, DEI typically deals with the first sphere here, workforce. But companies also need to think about some bigger spheres that they have an influence on, like the marketplace and like society in general. And we, as designers, we need to start thinking about the products and services we design and how you need to work across these dimensions. The experience users have with what we design, it impacts their lives and it impacts their perception of our brand and our organization. And if we don't align them across these, we risk that users and customers, they stop believing in our promises and our true intentions. So what we need to do is to connect inclusive design to DEI and make sure inclusive design works in concert with DEI in order to maintain the competitive advantage and attract both talent and customers. And with this perspective, we can say that inclusive design is what enables organizations to fully achieve their DEI goals, while also reaching business goals, and not to forget, create an inclusive society.
But still, a big question remains, and that is how. How do we enable an organization to do inclusive design? This is not something that just happens overnight. It's not like a checkbox at the end of the process. There's many different factors to take into account here. So to start with, there is a wide range of human diversity to cater to, but there's also many different ways to make your process more inclusive. And you also, of course, have to think about the people that are designing and the context that they are designing in. So doing inclusive design is not simple, and it takes time. And that is why we have to approach it strategically. And when we talk about strategic inclusive design, we talk about the purposeful implementation and application of inclusive design aligned with business goals. It's all about being aware of what inclusive design is going to achieve for your organization and how exactly you're going to make that happen. And if we truly want to make this a success, we have to tie it with business value. So in practice, strategic inclusive design can be broken down in a three-step process. It all starts with assessing and scoring your organization across enablers for inclusive design. This is all about orientation. After that, you have to find the right focus for your organization to target the areas with the biggest impact. And after that, you have to make change. Change is not easy, but with a solid process, you can systematically drive change that really lasts. And all designers can contribute to this, but we want to especially target design leaders here to really be the driving force behind this.
Yes. So let's spend a little bit of time together looking into what this means. So if you go to the next slide, we'll start looking at our inclusive design framework. This lays out the entire range of what inclusive design should be about. So I think most designers will easily think about products and services, and also understand that we need to think about how we actually design our products through the design process. But we also need to relate to the more fundamental aspects of our organization, our design team, and our corporate culture. And we have developed an interactive tool, which will become online soon, which will help you and your organizations to think through all these aspects and relate them to your situation. Essentially, it's a tool for an organization to sort of score yourself and learn about all the aspects of inclusive design. So if we go a little bit more into detail, and we start with the products and services, you'll see that it's subdivided into 5 different elements. These elements are from a tool called Universal Score, which I encourage you to check out if you don't know it already. And the assessment I talked about helps you go into each of these elements and explore them. So as an example, if we look at mental well-being, if you do the assessment, you will be asked to evaluate to what extent your products and services are designed for mental well-being. And it's backed up with a number of questions that help you reflect about these aspects. So questions are, does the user have control over the journey? Is it easy to fix mistakes? Are instructions clear? Are you sure the products or services don't create unnecessary urgency? So you go through this, you score yourself on a scale from 1 to 5 for each element. So you do the 5 elements of products and services, and then you go to the next session, which is the dimension about design team. And again, it's about deconstructing this question into different elements. So based on the interviews we've done with design leaders, we think that everyone typically thinks about user research and user testing. You have a design brief, maybe that's an opportunity to do an even better job with your design brief. You set some tough, hard requirements. It's an opportunity to start changing minds. It's also where you typically assign resources. So it's an opportunity to create inclusivity. And then if we move on to the next dimension, we start getting into these DEI elements. There's an overlap there because we believe inclusive design and DEI, they go together. They're interlinked. So again, how inclusive will your products and services be if your design team lacks diversity, or if you lack knowledge, and if you don't have the external resources to close the gaps? And the same goes for the next and last dimension, your company culture. How will you be able to create inclusivity if it's not clearly on your organization's vision and goal, if your leadership isn't openly committed to it, or if your partner network is not supportive? So again, it's about evaluating these elements. And zooming out, having been through all that, you start having an idea of how you're performing and what you can do to move forward.
Yes. So the outcomes of this assessment give you insight into how inclusive your products and services are and what you can focus on to improve. So the outcome could look something like this. So before you get the results of the assessment, you might not know where to start. But this gives you insight into where opportunities lie to improve your inclusive design processes. For example, you would find these 4 elements. This insight you would have to combine with your company's goals, their resources and capabilities, and the needs of the users, as well as employees. And if you bring that all together, it allows you to identify the right focus to have the most impact. So you might end up with, for example, these 3. You might also include something that actually you're already scoring quite well on, but investing more in it can offer a lot more value. So we ran a pilot with our assessment, and we already could see some interesting patterns there. So for example, on the products and service side, we see that even though designing for diverse physical needs has gotten a lot of attention over the past years, it still remains a big challenge. And if we look at the design process side, we see that companies are much further when it comes to user testing and user research, much more than other phases in the process, such as, for example, the design brief or the idea phase. So doing the assessment, interpreting the results, finding your focus, you've come a long way. But if you really want to make a change in your organization, there's still a lot more that you have to do.
Yes, that's why the 3rd step is change. Change is hard. It takes time. So we think it's important to drive change systematically in the organization. As we just mentioned, or talked about, you do first an assessment and then you find your focus. So step 0 is done. And the rest of this is a 6-step process based on change management theory, going from call to action. That's where you really engage your organization and you start bringing people with you, all the way until you've established structures so that it becomes a routine in your organization. If you're interested in this, because we're not diving into the details of the change guide here, but we've created a change guide, and there will be a course hosted here at Dogga sometime after Easter. So if you're interested, go check it out on Dogga's website. And I think it's time to summarize, isn't it? So we have developed a 3-step process which can help you guys take a strategic approach to inclusive design. It starts, step number 1, strategy should always be about orientation in the beginning. So first step is to assess your current situation. And it moves on to the 2nd step, finding your focus. Where can you realistically make the most impact? And lastly, realizing that change never happens all by itself. It's hard, it takes time. You need to drive it systematically. And with this, we believe that strategic inclusive design really helps you reach your full potential when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, while also being good for business and even helping create an inclusive society. Thank you.
The audience, I'll introduce the 2 next lecturers. They're from one of the design companies that today is under very day. One of them is Swedish and the other is German, Polish. So they also held their presentation in English. So then I should even introduce them in English.
Director in McKinsey Design Stockholm studio and a partner in McKinsey. She leads the design of new ventures within the concept The Leap, which partners with clients all over the world to build innovative businesses that are positive for people and the climate. Stina has built growth-breaking products that span from reimagining fitness to expedition travel to metaverse fashion. She has been part of leading the design industry for almost 20 years. And the other one, Oliver Weglinski. He joined Veriday McKinsey Design as a junior digital product designer about 6 months ago. He graduated from the Interaction Design Master's Program at the Umeå Institute of Design in 2022, and also holds a bachelor's degree in industrial design. And he won the Ung Svensk Form Award for his master's thesis named Carbon Care Work, which explores how carbon dioxide removal could be deployed in the future. And I would like just to read a little bit from the jury for you. This design project raised thoughts about future management of carbon dioxide emission, as well as the role of the designer. What does it mean to be caring as a designer, citizen, and human being today? This is an exciting example of what design can be and how it contributes to society. Quite impressive, or what do you think? Yeah, we are curious to hear your views on inclusive design and how it can be big business. So welcome, Stina Karlsson Reich and Oliver Weglinski.
So, hello everyone. Thanks for that kind introduction. Let me start with some questions. How many knew that McKinsey had a design studio? Hands up. Okay. That's not super shameful. Now more of you know. Anyway, how many of you feel that you would like to go home and explain what diversity, inclusion, and equity is to someone else? Hands up a little bit higher and clearer. Okay, look around you, so you that haven't raised your hands, you know who to ask. No, but seriously, I've also been really reading up on it lately and trying to, so don't feel anything about that. We'll get through it. So, inclusive design in business building. So, Oliver and I, we focus on designing products, experiences, and businesses that are positive for people, but also for the planet, for the climate, and as well as for businesses. And we never do this in silo, right? So we always work with a huge amount of engineers, marketers, business people, content people, et cetera, depending on what we're trying to do. And I think that's really important because that in itself creates diverse teams in some sense. So we'll like to focus a little bit about inclusive design in business building. But for the next 15 minutes, let me use this one. For those who need structure and context to be able to listen, some of us are like that, we'll start a little bit with the obvious question. Will companies that have a diverse workforce and work with equity and inclusion, will they have a higher profitability? So that's business case in the traditional sense, talking about return on investment and stuff like that. Of course, you can also talk about business cases in the context, how much carbon do you reduce, or how much biodiversity do you contribute to, or what is the impact for end users and society, as previous speakers were talking about. But then we'll move on a little bit to the foundation and deep dive in how we do it practically when we work with inclusive design for those that we're designing for. And in the end, Oliver, thank God, will make it a little bit tangible and give you some tips and tricks and tools, and some of them you know, and some of them might be new. Does that sound good? Cool, good. So a little bit about us, just on an intro. So McKinsey's purpose is to create positive and enduring change in the world. That means that we're dedicated to creating, accelerating, sustainable and inclusive growth, per se. So to do this, our workforce is, we have 65 offices in 140 countries. We are 47% female all over, and 29% in the executive teams. And we publicly support marriage equality, and we have programs to drive Black equity. We also have a whole diversity, equity, inclusion service line that does the research that a lot of what we're going to talk about today is based on. And in the end, we'll show you some QR codes that you can access that more. So I'm not going to talk so much about us in that context. But this means that our teams can incorporate these diverse perspectives, and that makes our impact stronger. Moving then to a little bit of the data. So our data shows that more diverse and inclusive firms are more likely to attract best talent, are able to better engage employees and connect with customers, and then maybe most important, interesting here today, is better at creating new business opportunities. So a key point here is that the research shows that diverse teams are more innovative, that's a fact, much stronger at anticipating shifts in consumer needs, and that makes new products and services possible, and then generating a competitive edge. So making it a little bit more tangible still. So our diversity and inclusion reports that we've done since 2017, I think it is from 1,000 companies from 15 countries. And it demonstrates here a couple of aspects of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it is that the business case for gender and ethnic diversity in top teams is stronger than ever. And since we published it, the likelihood of diverse companies outperforming industry peers on profitability has increased significantly. So if you're in a leadership position or interested in profitability, you can actually go back, use these figures, and bang them in the head on someone in the boardroom or leadership team. So companies in the top quartile of gender diversity and equity teams are 25% more likely to experience above average profitability than peers in their fourth quartile. Moreover, we find that the higher the representation, the higher the likelihood of outperformance. So companies with more than 30% women in executive teams are significantly more likely to outperform those between 10 and 30% women. Does that make sense? Good, okay. With that said, here comes the big with that said. This, specifically female in executive number, has moved up just 1 percentage point from 14 to 15% in 2019. And more than a third of companies still have no women at all on their executive teams. So at this rate, we will see the expected gender equality we are looking for in about 150 years. So still some work to do there. Another relevant fact is that in these times of changes, let's say that politically correct, if companies deprioritize inclusivity, equity, and diversity in a crisis, the impact is felt not just on the bottom line, of course, but also in people's lives. So research and experience warn us that diverse talent can be at risk during a downturn, as we are in, for several reasons, including that downsizing will have a disproportionate impact on roles typically held by diverse talent. But there's ample evidence, and this is a good point, that diverse and inclusive companies are more likely to make better and bolder decisions, which is a critical capability. So the more diverse team you have, the more resilient you are, the more you can adapt to change, and the better you are at handling crises. And in the other end of a crisis, you will come out better. So diverse teams have shown to be more likely to radically innovate and anticipate shift in consumer needs and consumption patterns, which help their companies gain competitive advantage. So what are these companies doing? And this you can go in and read more about, but on a very high level, the outperformers are doing a couple of things. So as my previous point, diverse representation on critical roles in leadership. So if you're here today and you're in the position to affect who's in a leadership role in the context that you're in, please do so. And if you're a designer here, please make sure that your employer, whoever you're working is, makes sure that you can enforce diverse leadership and ask for it. So the second thing that these companies, outperformers, are doing is that they're measuring accountability for delivering on these goals. So same there, if you can, in a position where you can set up KPIs, key performance indicators, or OKRs, or however you measure goals, please do so. It makes a huge, huge difference. And if you're a designer, you can ask for, if we have goals like this, and also ask for help on how you can translate them into your everyday life and what you're actually doing every day. And we'll talk a little bit about this later. Then there's some really bold moves needed, and one of them that I would like to point out as really important is tracking bias and discrimination. So, that on who is deciding, defining, and designing, right? The diversity in the actual workforce. If we move and flip the coin, so who are we designing for? Even here, the sort of business case for designing for everyone is super valid. And depending a little bit on which area you're working in, huge untapped business opportunities to serve. For example, as we have an aging population, you will need more and more product, services, experienced businesses that work with accessibility for that. And if you go to the younger generation, etc., you will find equal things. Which sort of moves us into the next phase, which is inclusive design and business building. Are you still with me? Yes, I'm nodding. At least in the front row, they're very active. So, as we've mentioned, if diverse teams are better equipped to take on uncertainties and changing, the world is changing a lot, right? So we have climate challenges, unpredicted aggressions between nations, the tech shift with AI and Web3, super interesting, pandemics, etc. Taking all of this in can be quite challenging. So I would really recognize that you here as designers play a super important part in designing a future that's more positive for all. And really take that opportunity. And it might not be every day, right? But at least some of the product, services, and businesses that you're working with, I would really encourage you to have that ambition. Some of the examples that we have been working on, so we've been working with a client a couple of years to make working out and moving accessible to all. So 80% of everyone who works out or moves don't actually want to go to gyms for several reasons. For some of them, it's actually accessibility reasons. We work with holistic health, providing holistic healthcare solutions for all. And this one is maybe not so much on diversity inclusion directly, but indirectly. So we work quite a lot with helping companies create products that are more carbon neutral. So we needed to translate and create a known North Star for ourselves and just for inspiration. So we say that we design experiences, products, and businesses that are positive for the climate, for people. And what we do is we translate this into a guiding principle that we can ask every day. So we can say, what I'm designing for, does it have a positive impact not only on the business's bottom line, but does it also help to reduce carbon footprint and increase biodiversity? And what we're talking a lot about here today, does it have a positive impact for the users that I am designing for? And we do this, maybe I go one back, sorry guys. Then we translate it into, so what do we want to do? We want to do zero carbon digiphysical human experiences. Specifically this last line, sustainable human experiences. We have design research, service designers, and circular designers as a special competence within us. And this case comes from one of the things I've been working on lately, which is designing dual drops in the fashion industry. So you do physical products and you do digital fashion at the same time. And there's a lot of questions on who are we designing for? Because when we were meeting all of these lovely people using this type of services and products, it's like, well, you're also designing for my second self. And we're also having a lot of user-generated content, and then there's a lot of distribution of ownership. So actually, who has the right to own the IP and the assets? Are we also being inclusive in that context? But I think that's a separate 15 minutes on that topic. Just for context, if you don't know us so well, our heritage started in the studio that we are in 1969. So it was started at Ergonomic Design, if you translate it, and then later called Veriday. So if you're interested in specifically ergonomic design of physical products, feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to share our knowledge within that. And then playing it back a little bit. So we take a human-centered and multidisciplinary approach to this. So you need to, as the great framework that you were showing before, this is just another variant of it. Really start with the user impact. So who are you designing for? Then we always look at the tech. What are the tech possibilities to create the most inclusive, accessible, best experiences? Don't forget the sustainability part. Still, need to push it in there sometimes. And then we look at, so what is the business opportunity, the impact, and how we can make this happen? So that's a little bit how we work with that. And then, is this big enough? Yes, it is. We have the opportunity, since we work end-to-end in creating new products and services, sometimes from scratch, to affect all of these different parts. So we can say, when we set the business models, set the right KPIs, right? We can, when we do the team setup, make sure that it's not only a diverse set that we work with, but we can also set rules to make it equitable and inclusive in our culture. And then the huge part is, of course, in the research and then later on the testing. So there's a good amount of frameworks, processes, tools to really work with, so that you make sure that you're being unbiased in your selection criteria, etc. And then during the actual product build, it's a lot about keeping engaging with making sure that you're adhering to all of the standards that you can work with. And then when it comes to launching and scaling, it's a lot about building capabilities, making sure you hire in a diverse way, etc. I think with that said, enough from me. Handing over to you, Oliver.
Thank you very much, Stina. At McKinsey, we are in the business of creating new services and products for all. I think everyone would agree with that, right? But who are all users? Who is everyone? Might we accidentally have excluded a group of folks or not considered their needs and developments in our products and services? By asking these questions, I really want to stress out that it is our responsibility as designers to ensure that our designs are accessible to everyone who could benefit from it. And in our diverse world these days, with shifting perspectives and overlapping complicated needs, it is really on us to design on the behalf of different diverse groups. This is why we have to keep this as our North Star and take a lot of work, one product at a time, to create justice and equity. We have talked a lot about bias today, and one aspect where bias can actually be really positive is by being biased towards choosing our customers and really prioritizing organizations that prioritize inclusion and growth, inclusive growth themselves in their KPIs. And one example that Stina already mentioned is the one with the global leading lifestyle brand that tries to go into the metaverse, this crazy virtual space that is still a little bit untouched at helping to help people to express themselves in a way they haven't been able before. And we are really honored to work with organizations like that who are leading the way in fostering a more inclusive world through their commitment to diversity and inclusion. But we are not only determined to doing this in organizations like that, but really in every aspect of our work. This is also why we at McKinsey have developed a framework in 3 different steps that we take before we even start with designing a project. The first step is the diagnose phase, where we try to begin assessing the situation from the start, identifying all the observable symptoms and bias in the field that we are trying to design in. In the second step, we took a deep dive and we deep delve, asking questions about challenges and assumptions and really trying to understand the root cause of the problem. And even if the problem is complex and it's something that happens on the cultural level or a regulatory level that we can't really influence, it's still important to be aware about that, because we have to know whether we create a band-aid or a really valuable solution. And once we have gathered all of that information, we go in the third step, which is called de-bias, where we intentionally design to eliminate the bias and create products that promote equity and minimize discrimination. And sometimes when we go back to the deep dive phase, it's not like the deepest level where we can actually create change. Maybe it's the second or third level, but we have to be aware about those things. And by following this process, we gradually shift the system and business to a more equitable state, getting closer to the North Star that Stina was talking about. But all of those frameworks, like ours and the others that we heard today, are really cool. But what really have pushed equity are actually standardizations, because standards are the things that really make those things cemented in our design process. And for us as digital designers, there is the Web Content Accessibility, WCAG guideline that focuses on auditory, physical, speech, cognitive, and language impairments, but also the European Accessibility Act. I think it's important to mention that you always have to see where you are working, in what kind of region, what kind of standards exist there. And then there's also things that should become a standard but are not at the moment, such as inclusive design and research methodology. At McKinsey, we really like acronyms, by the way. And it's super important to bring people from the margins, as we heard today, into the center of the design process, from the beginning, from the user research phase on. And it's not only because we want to develop things from their perspective, but we also want to create overlapping perspectives among different diverse people, since we don't really know who the users of tomorrow's are going to be. So we have to have a big sample as possible in order to create for those futures that we don't know how they're going to look like, right? And all of this is pretty good, but also not super easy to implement for everyone. But luckily, there is simple things that everyone can do even today. So there's, for example, all of those cool plugins for Figma and other design software that helps you to adhere, for example, to the WCAG standards by having different clickers and different comparison tools for contrast and other things that give designers straightforward way to improve their designs for people with impairments. And those things are really easy to find. They're probably already on the websites of a lot of different design tools, and if you Google them, you will find them pretty quickly. And another simple things that every one of us can do are fostering a culture and environment where those changes actually can be made possible. We at McKinsey, for example, have a little ritual or a little list of micro-behaviors that we are trying to live ourselves in order to create a space where those inclusive experiences can happen through culture. One thing, for example, is to create a supportive environment in the first place. Don't really assume things about your colleagues. Don't say things like, oh, how is your boyfriend doing, or your girlfriend? If you don't know if they have a girlfriend or boyfriend, just say partner instead. And try to make genuine connections with your colleagues. Don't multitask in Zoom calls. Really try to ask them, how are you doing? And if you don't know if people know each other in a Zoom call, introduce them to each other. Also try to engage in diverse perspectives. Ask yourself, how is my colleague doing? How would I feel if I would be part, or someone of a different gender or nationality or sexuality? You can ask yourself those questions even if you probably will never able to answer them, but just putting yourself into the shoes of these might already help to level the playing field as well. And then in the end, take also visible action. Use your pronouns in your LinkedIn handle, and if you see any types of microaggressions, speak up and don't be silent. I hope we could give you a nice glimpse into the insights of inclusivity at McKinsey. Here are the QR codes that Sina was talking about, and I hope we could answer some questions. And if not, please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Awesomeness. Great. Thank you.
Tusen takk.
Tusen takk.
Her tror jeg vi alle har ganske mye å lære, egentlig. Ikke minst med alle.
Our assumptions that we all the time, there was a lot of information, a lot to learn. As you know, that's great. The recordings from these lectures will be published. You will get an email about that later. I'm sure some of you would like to watch them again. But now we will move outdoors, imaginary. We will hear from a company that has a vision to be recognized as the world's most sustainable outdoors furniture producer and to contribute to produce public spaces that are inclusive and democratic. They make benches that invite to both sitting and sleeping or lying, and then they develop a new outdoors based on different cultures need to sit in different heights. I do that myself now with that chair over there. Sometimes you need variation. We learned that also before. These are one of few companies where inclusive design is a part of the business strategy and have as their slogan, everybody can save the world a little. And last week they actually got double victory in Stockholm, Scandinavian Awards. They got the prize both for the Architecture of the Year and the year Sustainability Prize of the Year. Give them a hand. Of course, for the factory, the Plus, designed by Bjarke Engel Group. Now we will listen more about Vestre, why it's important to them to focus on social sustainability, both in the commercial and society perspective. The one who will come on the stage here, he has almost 20 years experience in the company, so he has been there for a long time. Yes. We're excited to hear how you work with this concretely. So please welcome on stage Thomas Sund, Assistant Director in the company Vestre. Thank you, Lisbeth. Yeah. You actually told everything I had to say, so just joking. Thank you to Doga for inviting me. So allow me to speak of what I love the most, which is social meeting places, social inclusion meeting spaces. We have been in the business for some years, 75 years last year, our company. So in that time, everything was possible for God and mechanic. So Just Vestre started in 1947. It was after World War II, the land should be built. Everybody had to contribute. You made effective fishing cake machines. We don't do that anymore. Since we got 75 years, we made a little film for our anniversary. So we were social meeting spaces, but what we physically do, we create furniture. But we believe that social inclusive meeting spaces contributes. It's important initiative to make people meet in public spaces and learn to know each other. If you never meet, if you don't know about each other, then it's easy that misunderstandings occur, polarization. So we genuinely believe in the social meeting spaces for everyday life, where people meet, different background, culture, finance background. You can meet, talk, and actually get acquainted. And in that way, we was a bit naive that you can save the world a little neighborhood by neighborhood. So we're speaking about Norwegian concept. He translates freedom to Rome. And so local environment school that are open 24/7. We don't have that in all countries, so we have these fantastic places where people can meet. So we try to convince the market you can do that in other places. But that can also lead to unwanted behavior. Almost Times Square, we were allowed to make this furniture together with another company. I think this before Corona, 500,000 people passed here. So it's a definition of great melting pot of a social meeting space. And a very good test for the quality of our furniture and good for our reputation. And so that's it. After Corona, it has changes. There have been some demonstration, and USA become even more polarized. So it's not the correct angle, but the furniture are there. And it's still a social meeting space. We have 3 beams, constructive beams. We have design, quality, sustainability. Quality, sustainability are very intercepted, but here is an example of design part. The furniture outdoors in the Munch Museum. I don't want to comment the architecture of the house, but we won the competition constructing the furniture. And objective, very nice furniture. We work with the 30+ designers. Too few ladies, too many men in the best age. We have beer in the Dogger. We receive some prizes. We have 17 labels of good design from Dogger. So design is very important to us. Quality. Some of you know this bench. It's sitting in the Skøyen Park. Some will call it retro. Not up to date, but it has renaissance in Germany. The point is, this is quality, long lasting. With a steel factory in Torsby, Värmland. We opened that in 2014. We do all our steel work, also only Swedish steel who pollute 20% of the world average. And then this building that gave us this prize that we told you about. And this is a greater project than just to construct a factory. So it's an example. You can go from word to action. Everybody speak about the green shift, sustainability, and so on, but nothing happens. So of course we had Corona. So things were await, but during the Corona, we actually constructed a new factory, and we're quite proud of it. 1,000 square meter, designed by a big architect. So this is the first architect. So it's called Outstanding, which this is most strictest certification of buildings. And we work so that one gets a new impression of what is manufacturing, because it really fits in the woods here. Something, maybe you know that woman, Greta Thunberg, next generation, for them to believe us and believe there are some future, there has been some changes. And one of the changes regarding industry, Many people regard industry as a part of the problem, not a part of the solution. We of course believe that industry is the part of the solution, and we're optimists for the future. This is the opening of our factory, plus the plus is our greatest furniture. It's a large social meeting place, general accessibility, and then we have there's some swings and places for playing. This is a Lego model of the factory. We had this in Stockholm last week in an exhibition, and around the park, for it to be open and available for everybody, we have made an experience exploring park. You can go around the factory, like this table is 30 meters. You can do the table for 120 person. And then we have placed sculpture or benches in the park, 300 square meter, some 300,000 square meters, of course. Maybe you recognize this bench is outside a Nobel Center. It's a peace bench, and it's based on a quote from Nelson Mandela, who said, "The best weapon is to sit down and talk." And what is so obvious is it's a boat. So when you have a bow, and when there's gravity, you don't have so much distance. This was sitting outside United Nations in New York, and it was moved to us outside the forest. I will not spend very much long time on plus, but I'll show you a couple of pictures, because this is a factory that manufactures something. This is not an exploration center, but it produces effectivity with sustainability, and you can actually come close and study the production. I'll get back to that with furniture. But this is a factory. That's how it looks inside, and that's the view from the window. So this is how it looks when we have washed the floor. And everybody are welcome to come and say hello, to have a look. So this is funny. So the Women's Day, Christian Robert Randi and Margit, named after two first female engineers in Norway. And here there are a lot of men in manufacturing, but this picture is taken from when we started with open production, week number 7 last year. This is 1 year ago, but now we have a better distribution between men and women. And in Torsby, we have some very, very clever welders who originates from Afghanistan, educated in Sweden. And we have how you regard industry. We have moved it around, so you don't get into any kind of main office. You go directly into the plant where you can say hello to people. This was production and the plus. And now, we really believe that everybody can save the world a little. Nobody can do everything, anybody can do something. And as an example, we have 10% profits. We reserve that for sustainable targets. And if all Norwegian companies have done that, we would double our development aid, a lot of money. We have based our philosophy on 9 of the 17 sustainability targets. So we cannot do everything, but we have picked out the things that we think we can do. I cannot go into everything, but this is a product that I really love. It's our manufacturer maintenance team. This is our person who get work training, who never have worked, and they actually do a job. They do repair work on benches. So this is win-win-win, valuable for us and our clients, customers. the last our package. We don't have the time, so you have to go to our web pages. You can read everything on our web page, including our budget. Now, the last 5 minutes: public health, social meeting spaces, social inclusive meeting places. It's in Oslo, half of the population are singularly living alone, so it's important to have meeting spaces in the city and to have available so that people get out and meet. Because I personally, I'm not worried for the person who go to a sport center, but just to get people out and meet a little, you get much more better mental health and physical health. So that's it's extremely important to prepare for public proper meeting places in public space. We struggle with something because this is not that easy, because we have a lot of rules how to have the correct furniture, but this is based on different groups of users, or maybe you just forgot some of the groups. So you can have different rules in different countries. Easy example: the difference between UK and USA, the regulation between for wheelchair users compared to USA. So here, typical setting is the traditional sitting room. How you put the furniture outdoors. It's more easy when people can be movable, but of course some places you can do that. But so in public spaces, furniture are usually mounted, permanently mounted. So to get the wheelchair under the table, it have to be high, and then it maybe it's too high for others. So you have to try to construct furniture that doesn't look that is specially adapted for disabled people. And so there should also be space for a carrier. And this is work for school here in Berg School in Oslo. And I mentioned this. We have this sitting heights, and different people use the public space in different ways, and some like to sit lower, or wants to sit lower, or you have to lie, or to behave in a way, and you have to prepare for that. And you have a classic situation, park situation, along a path, and what you need there, that's as many people can use it, be comfortable, get in and out, and sit. I use it as a social meeting space. And it has to be with armrests, the back, and you have to choose how close you sit. We know which we don't like to sit very close to each other, but sometimes you want to, or you just want to study the weather or enjoy the weather. And then you have different heights of sitting is an important subject, because if you're shorter than average, and you have a problem of walking, you don't want to feel that you fall down. And we always like long tables. There always room for one more. Or the groups that are not familiar can share the same table, and you use it for everything. There's always written. This is bathing in the autumn holiday. It's a classic wheelchair, but in the middle, and you can easily get in and out, so you don't panic. So if you had the holds continuous back, it would not so good. So the same here. This works both for wheelchair and for a carrier, baby carrier. Here's the colors, nature, garbage bins in public space. Armrests, very difficult subject, because when does it bring hostile architecture? For some, it's a help with armrests. You can always discuss that with armrests. And then the thing about color. Pardon. How you discuss, how you view it. What is very nice is that we see more and more use of colors. Colors doesn't solve anything regarding contrast, visibility. People can be colorblind, and the strength of the color doesn't change that. No, finally, don't forget the insects and the biological diversity. It has to be included. We see that particularly in Norway, we take it for granted. Oslo is a green city, but in Europe, many places, very important to get some green, otherwise it gets very sad. Finally, slogan, there is no one size fits all. You have to think about everybody, and you have as many alternatives as possible so for everybody to enjoy the furniture. So that was it, really. Thank you for your attention. That was not little. I didn't know that there were so many benches, but now I know. And I have to go across the Swedish border to Magnor and study your factory. Our next lecture is quite okay if you move around, get the coffee. He's from Oslo, with the Indian family background. As a Sikh, he carries his turban with pride. He's actually one of the founders of the Turban Day in Oslo. He got a prize for it with the target to break down prejudice and to contribute to Norway becoming the world's best country to be different. And you have succeeded. Maybe you have seen him on TV, because he has been in the program Love Seek. It was awarded for a prize. He's a civil economist. He has worked with Telenor Innovation, Digitalization. He has worked with Rambøll, with Innovation Project. 1.5 years ago, he got his dream job in Schibsted as global head of diversity, inclusion and belonging. He now uses his diverse background and business background in different projects in the Schibsted group. They have a lot of companies, and one of the projects was analyze us maturity level in diversity recruitment together with Skogstad Recruitment Company. I know here that they have received design support from Doga. I know that this analysis created a lot of interest in other companies. So now we're looking forward hearing about Schibsted, and you're looking with diversity, belonging. Please, stage is yours. I must admit, I'm so nervous. I haven't been on the moon. I didn't design Lamborghini. I don't have any design concept. I didn't win any prizes, but I've been in the national service in Kolsås military camp. And before I came to did the national service, I was afraid to wear a big turban. So the picture there is before I come to the army. So I had a bandana on the head instead of this turban that you see to the right. And not because I didn't want to. I've always been very proud of this, being different, being a Sikh, and being proud of carrying a turban. But when you saw all these headlines after 9/11, where I said in the papers, terrorists, there was a picture of a man with a turban and a bird, so it was not a good idea to have that on the head. But it changed in the army. I was called to the chief of the battalion. He was in his office in the second floor. And when I was called to his office, I was very nervous because I thought I did something wrong. So I trembled when I walked up to him. And I was a big man, 2 meters. He said, "Sing, sit down." And I sat down. And he stared on this bandana and he said, "Sing. You look like a bandit with that on your head." I thought, oh, this will be an interesting conversation. There was a conversation that many had, but I know about you, Sikh. You have this great big turbans. I said, yes, that's true. The first people meet when they come to Kolsa's camp is you and the guard. So it's important that you look good, that you're presentable. So I want you to start to wear a big turban. Is that okay with you? I said, okay, yes. And from that day, every morning when everybody checked would they have shade, I had a turban check. And if my turban was not 7-meter turban was not accepted, I had to make a new one. The reason I tell this story is that this is an example of a leader that had a competent diversity, competence, ethnic Norwegian man, 50 plus to take that stereotype, who had taught himself something that was not his normal word, and he used his knowledge to make me feel included. I promised that after that day I gave much more of myself. I felt that I had been, somebody saw me, somebody accepted me, and diversity, competence is not the same as diversity experience. So me as 1,100 people in this room can give me diversity experience, but not diversity competence, because that is the ability to go to a room, to give empathy, to see the world from somebody else's eyes, and to use that knowledge to create better products, services for a different world. This means that there should be both observers, actors in different settings, not just observers. Briefly about Schibsted. Schibsted have a total of 70 companies. We have 3 main verticals. VG, Aftenposten, I do know. The other is the digital market spaces, and in Norway is Finn.no. And then there are digital services like Lendo. We have 1 billion digital touchpoint with our users every month, and the reason why I have this job and the Schibsted put it on the map is because we believe that billion can become 2 if you understand more users out there. And this leads me to, this is a description. This graphic shows the 500 largest company in the USA through 50 years from 1960 and 50 years ahead. You see the development of these companies. What you see that during this 50 years, that 52% of the companies disappeared. They died out. And the new prediction is the lifespan of big companies will be around 14 years. And I'm sure these companies invested in transformation, change. So why did they fail? In my theory is that our tendency, our user behavior, availability of products and services is so close to us. We see so much more, both physically, but most digitally, that makes our user habits, trends have changed much quicker than ever before. So for you to survive, you have to change in written with that. So you have to develop products that are relevant for the new user habits. But it's not sufficient just to innovate these people also innovated. We have to innovate correctly. And this is where I believe that this with diversity is relevant. And this is not really about diversity and inclusion, it's about design. If you integrate good design thinking, you have already included diversity inclusion in what you develop. Why? Because it has to do with adaptability, to have the radar in the company to pick out these new habits, these changes in society. So you need this sensor in your company, in your product development team, number one. And then when you move to the users, you have to think about desirability. You have to understand the users. Is that you shouldn't understand the user from your biases. You shouldn't understand the user and listen to what you want to say. You really have to listen and speak less. And in the end, your flexibility and your ability to change the habits that you always have to face this change. You can turn it this design thing, or this is the same thing in the end. Speaks a little fast. A little more about myself. I'm born and raised Bogstad in Oslo. That's Oslo West. So I went to Ribakken school in Holmenkollen, and we were 3 kids with different skin color. One who had so I have been described in the Norwegian pop song as Sumi. I created diversity, and that's cool, with 3 brown kids. But in that life, I feel very Indian. I felt very brown because every day I was in my Indian home, which has had garlic, Indian TV, Bollywood, Punjabi as the home language, very Indian. And every day I went out the door and to a Norwegian world who didn't observe the Indian world. Wasn't a problem, it was just a fact. And that was this lasted till I met my wife, or I dated. We can date in India too. She's from Grönland, born and raised in Grönland district in Oslo. And when she and her friends met me and saw me, they thought I was so Norwegian, so they always made fun of me, the way I spoke, the way I sat. So they called me. They called me white, because she had a very multicultural, globally set of friends. But our first dating trip, we went to London, and after the trip came home. Of course, I had paid for everything, so I put all the expenses in. So you can pay 50%, and then she had enough. She said an Indian person would never have asked for money, and he said, "You're a caucus nut. You're brown on the outside, but you're not Indian on the inside. You're white inside." And I said, "I'm not a caucus nut. I'm a Kinder egg." And this is not because I'm sweet, but because my diversity competence, that is not limited from what you see. The reason why I mention this is that that's the way we regard diversity competence in Schibsted company. It's not only gender, ethnicity, turbans, disabilities, age, or diversity is so much more. Diversity is what you can't see. In this case, my competence was not that I looked what I do. I think my competence is that you can take me to Oslo West, and I can be an observant. I can navigate in that environment. I can sell products, and you can take me to our shrine in Alnabru. Maybe you have seen that yellow building next to Hells Angels. next to hell is heaven. The yellow building is our shrine, and I can go there. I can go there and sell ideas to the Turban Day, to this old man, the most holy thing that have the head, the turban. We can understand. We can take. We will take the most holy thing you have on your head. We take you to the center of Oslo, sell it to everybody. And this competence, you can see it. This is something I had that is not visible. And to define diversity in Schibsted is not just the outer. It might be the cognitive, the way we argue, the social, who are we together with, where is our cottage, are you married, divorced, children, sisters, brothers? It can be. Or what business you're in, or what position you had. It can always also be where you live. This is a product where we made a map of where everybody in our organization live. And you can see this. This is blue dot. This is where the employees in this company you live. You can see most people live in the center and quite a few on Oslo East. So what I want them to ask themselves is 33% are multicultural. Do we believe that it's a potential to tap in that part of the population? If the answer is yes, would it be an idea that maybe grew up in Oslo East, understood where these multicultural people live, and understood their habits, their needs, or this part of custom? And this is the important part of the understanding of diversity competence. But maybe people that, we hire Sumit, he's brown. But as I told you, I grew up on the Ørjan, a friend. He grew up at Hellerud, but he doesn't look as he grew up there. But maybe he knows more about the population of that side of the city. So you have to care if you want to transfer the value of diversity, if you want to create any value and profit out of it. So when we say that diversity is everything, it's important to boil it down to something. But you dig chicken diet, I like pasta. So we have to focus on 6 areas, and these 6 areas is about the society where we live. This is a picture of Norway, demographic, and what we know about the society is that every 7th person is retired. Every 5th person is multicultural, every 2nd person is a woman, and every 15th is non-hetero, and every 6th is neurodiverse, and every 5th person has some kind of disability. So I want that you, in your team, does it look like that in your team? And if it doesn't look like them among your employees, you have a job to do. And this starts with getting insight in the development of products in the organization in order not to become one of the 52% that get out of business tomorrow. There was some kind of query. We asked young talents when they look for an employer. Number 1, colleagues, the social environment before the payroll. Top T are priority. So diversity, inclusion is important for young talent. So when young talents look for a job, it's important that the companies focus on that and do something about it. But not only that, we want the best talents, but we're not rigged to find the best talents. We're rigged to recruit the people that we have always recruited. So that is a job that we have to do, and we're about to do it so that we don't take the best talents from single groups, that we find the best talents from everybody. That's what it's about. And then it's about the product development that we have discussed a lot today. We want to create the best products, and therefore we need diversity in the room. one example, and it's not, we're far away from getting there. So we're sort of tasting this, but to get good products, we need diversity. Let's take an example. We have a web page. Our web page. We have Martin. He has a person who is software development, who is blind, and the user experience is for a person with reduced sight or blind. And we know that every 17 person in society has reduced sight or they are blind. And what we have seen that when Martin is involved in the process, we don't only create a user experience for people with reduced sight, we see that the user experience is improved for everybody. The most difficult is to get innovation. We want different viewpoints to get on the table. Is in the innovation room, is in the reader room. It creates a positive friction. Sorry. Pardon. What we know is that all we have felt being excluded at some moment in our lives. What we know that we exclude people conscious and unconsciously all the time. We also know that some researchers have studied this, that exclusion is painful. When we have said that how the brain is being inflicted by exclusion, you said that your brain is influenced like a physical pain. So being ignored has the same effect on the brain as being beaten. This is an example. Wheels. This is from Norwegian Museum. Wheels, tool uses, and transport of goods. Imagine if you sit in the wheelchair and every second building that you enter, you say, no, that's okay. I can go in the backside with the trucks. Think the feeling. Maybe it's okay, but imagine the feeling you can create if you have inclusive design in the main entrance. Imagine if you had women and goods, turban and transport on the backside, entrance on the backside. It's not very good. And the reason I wanted to speak about exclusion is that to understand inclusion, we think we are good people, we are tolerant, we don't exclude people. Most leaders believe that they are good at inclusion, but most leaders are not really good at including. And what we have seen is that who includes patterns, traits, the perception of your employee that report to you, their perception of being seen, fear, treated, can increase by 70%. And we say that the ability of cooperation move ahead. And this is what this examination proves. 3 examples. Be curious. When you're curious, you learn more. And who you are curious about will feel being seen. And you say that we cannot ask many questions. I think we can ask all questions, but start with warming up, getting to the zone where you can ask all kinds of questions. It's not the case there's any short path to enter a zone where you can ask all the questions, but you have to invest time, interest. It doesn't have to be tolerance. It has to do being open. To be tolerant means that I can see you and accept you, but my view of the world is better of you. So the hope is that you enter that curiosity without any negativity, and that I should try to enter your view of the world. Consciousness around our power, our privilege, our prejudice. We all have prejudices. And we're part of the power structure, and we have some privileges. maybe if you're heterosexual, then you don't have to worry traveling around the world getting killed. If you're a woman in a male dominated situation, maybe you have to hear dirty jokes, or being a woman, or being a queer, or wearing a turban, other places in the world, and being afraid of that. If you didn't have to be afraid of that, you have some privileges. And at last, but not at least, one thing is that what you had in your team, and if your team is very homogeneous, I would develop your inner circle, hang out with people, meet people outside your circles. So we have meetings with the same people all over again. Hang out with new people, different people, to understand, to learn in these settings. We have done an analysis. We want to create an inclusive process, meaning that it even includes all kinds of people, not only the most dominant, not only one kind of people, but a good user journey for all kinds of people in the recruitment context. Therefore, we have made an analysis regarding how our recruitment processes actually work together with Skogstad. They have been specialized in the diversity competence, and together with Doga, we have made this analysis that we hope will be the fundament of a playbook she will use this world. She will create the best recruitment journey for all people. And what you have seen, we have made many findings, but one of them is that we love ourselves, or most people. And we see that in recruitment process. When we have spoken with leaders that recruit leaders, there's a couple of interesting things. All the leaders we spoke with are forward-leaning and want to have more diversity. They want more diversity. And they are all for it. But what they also say is that they more often recruit people that are equal to themselves. And this is about a lot of things. One thing is chemistry, personal chemistry. When we meet people, we've been on town, or I met Sumit, he was fantastic. Was it because Sumit was different, or was it because you found the chemistry and you were on the same wavelength? And you have something in common. And we see that many of the people who recruit, they recruit people who are similar to themselves, and diversity is then reduced. We see that what you look for when you recruit staff, what you really see, why you hire them. Can you explain that chemistry or whatsoever? You get very vague answer. This means that when we hire some of these people, we have a positive bias where we find similarities with ourselves, and we create negative bias for anything that's different to us. That means we have a big problem in the company where we are. Also means that a lot of the companies who do this, they have a challenge regarding diversity. You cannot remove this prejudice, but you have to be conscious if you really want diversity. You have to think of it from before, and what prejudice you have when you sit and hire people. We know that there's a challenge regarding media. We know that 28% of Norwegian population are news avoiders. They don't read the media. That can be a democratic challenge. We also know that many multicultural don't read our media. We also know that very few multicultural with as that study for journalism, and we have blamed the pipeline. We say that there's not sufficient multicultural. We blame the pipeline. There's not sufficient multicultural. We blame the school. But we had to change that now. So we have done some experiments, among others. We have many multicultural program. We rolled out a Norwegian paper. We recruited people who had the competence, well-educated people with multicultural background. And we said they have a competence that's important for us, but they don't necessarily have experience as journalists. But I think if we get the right people, we can train them. And they accepted 4 candidates last year, and 2 of them have now a permanent job. So in Sweden, we discovered that multiculturals don't read papers. So we arranged a workshop with multicultural young people. So we thought, how can news be communicated in good ways to them? So like music, maybe like a song, like a rap. So this multicultural program is quite cool. So we got Osama Shireen. He came to Norway from Syria in 2017. He was a dentist, not a journalist, he was a dentist. And he was accepted in this trainee program because they think he had some valuable entrance competence. And while he was in that trainee program, that Bergens Tidende, such a newspaper, discovered that he had a very big network. So, by the way, on the way from Syria to Norway, he had stopped in Norway, learned Russian, which is very valuable. So he was employed. So we had thought in traditional pipelines, we have been just as homogeneous. So this is an example that this works. So I hope we will invest more in it. Diversity is about all kinds of differences in this room. So what makes us unique, and that's called diversity. Inclusion is not only to include diversity, but create leadership that enable us, that people are not afraid to share the difference if we reach that goal, the goal belonging. So you get the possibility of including yourself at work. So the dream should be that Sumit should not use 25% of his energy to hide who is Sumit, but use this 25% to do a better job for Schibsted. So I hope I'll be able to do that the following years, although we're still not there. Thank you very much. Thank you for an inspiring lecture. I hope you see you on Turban Day in April. We invite everybody there. And everybody who has to go home, yes, please listen again. We have to be conscious. We're a little over time. But we hope as many as possible of you stay, because we still have interesting lectures. We have one more lecture and then we have a panel sofa discussion. Regarding media, because now we will listen about a TV channel that we all grew up with, and who has an assignment to produce service for all of Norway's population. They have worked goal-oriented that their products and services should mirror all their viewers. And they have a great reputation for their offer, but also for their streaming services, NRK. Even Netflix pays attention to that. They also won the Dogger Prize for Universal Design, particularly this streaming services. And our lecturer was an important person. She has been 22 years on NRK, the last 28 years as a project manager, diversity strategy, and she is strengthening diversity both in front and behind the camera. That's her. And she's also in the International Broadcasting Organization EBU in the expert group for availability, accessibility, so-called. And she's a leader of diversity. And I think we could say that she has diversity, accessibility on her mind. So now I'm looking forward to how NRK are working with the force of diversity. I welcome Siri Antonsen. No sound but text.
Egentlig helt innlysende at vi nødt til å satse på universell utforming. Det nyskapende med NRK TV når det gjelder universell utforming at de siste årene har vært veldig gode på å jobbe det inn som en del av innovasjonsprosessen, uansett hva de utvikler. Så når de ser for seg at de har lyst til å utvikle noe nytt til publikum, så har de med seg en tanke fra starten av på at dette må også fungere for en som ikke hører, eller en som ikke ser, eller en som ikke kan navigere med mus, men må bruke tastaturet for eksempel.
Tjenesten må jo være navigerbar med skjermleser på alle plattformene våre. Og det jo direkte overførbart til andre kontekster, til andre bruksscenarier. For eksempel du sitter foran PC-en og vil navigere med tastatur, så jo det samme navigasjonsmønster som en blind bruker med skjermleser. Så det på en måte basisen vår i hovednavigasjonen. Og så handler det veldig mye om lesbarhet og kontrast. Vi har jo introdusert en bakgrunnsfarge i tjenesten som endrer seg basert på hvilket innhold som valgt. Og det å sikre at det alltid god nok kontrast og lesbarhet gjennom hele navigasjonsflyten der, jo noe vi har jobbet veldig, veldig mye med.
Jeg tror ikke alle alltid tenker på at folk ser på TV uansett om de ser dårlig, eller hører dårlig, eller sitter i rullestol. Altså, alle opplever at NRK TV skal være en tjeneste for seg. Og for eksempel jeg som blind, jeg ser på TV selv. Jeg synes Nytt på Nytt kjempegøy. Jeg synes det fint å se på serier. Nå har vi også valgt å synstolke de store norske dramaene vi har. Og jeg bruker mye NRK TV selv om jeg ikke ser, og da det viktig at jeg klarer å navigere fram til innholdet også. For at innholdet har ikke noe verdi hvis jeg ikke kan nå det.
NRK presenterer synstolkingen av Atlantic Crossing, en NRK-serie produsert av Cine Nord. En svart bil kjører langs en øde landvei. Det snø på bakken og spredte trær langs veien. Himmelen grå.
Det vi kanskje har fokusert mest på å tenke på brukerne våre. Hvordan vil det her oppleves for eksempel en som blind, eller som døv, eller som bare bruker NRK TV ute i sola en fin dag? Eller hvordan fungerer det for oldemor på 80 som skal prøve å lære seg dette nye NRK TV, og som synes det litt skummelt? Og hvis vi har brukerne i sentrum, så tror jeg vi i mye større grad lykkes med å oppnå noe som folk kan bruke, enn at vi skal måtte fokusere for mye på tekniske detaljer eller lovkrav. Da.
Det mange hensyn å ta, men vi ser jo at det opp mot den store konkurransen som nå da, i strømmemarkedet, så dette her et stort fortrinn for oss, det å være best på tilgjengelighet og universell utforming.
Det et veldig viktig poeng når det gjelder universell utforming at det bra for business, rett og slett. Hvis du skal lage en tjeneste eller selge et produkt, så sier det seg selv at jo flere potensielle kunder du har, jo bedre det. Og så enkelt det med universell utforming av media også. At jo flere som kan bruke det, jo flere kommer mest sannsynligvis til å se det. Så det er et sånt stalltips. At husk på at det er på over lang tid, så vil du tjene på dette. Garantert.
Thank you, Dorga, for a great film. My name is Sir Antons. Short description. Women around 50. Woman, dark, half-long hair, black trousers, and blouse striped blouse. Yes, and diversity is good for business and is strategically important for us. We cultivate the power of diversity. It's high up in our plans, meaning we explore and take advantage of the creative potential that is in different competence, experience, perspective. In our community, people can be themselves. We meet them with the respect for everybody. We started with what do NRK people define diversity. Yeah, but mostly people think about multicultural. But diversity is much more, as many of you have mentioned. We're all a part of diversity. We don't walking around if you have multicultural competence. Is that's all you are. You are in addition man or women and many other things. For example, I'm a woman, I'm a previous handball player, I'm poor at making food. So I use as a starting point the standard description in Norway of diversity. And we say for us in NRK, diversity, age, gender, functioning, language, dialects, philosophy, looks, identity of sex, sexual orientation, education, experience, competence, interest, family situation, geographic, social, ethnic, and cultural background. And that's a lot. And everything is important. But in our job, we saw that there are 4 groups that we have to elevate. Not because we're not good enough, but it's because we see that that's where we have a lot to gain. And the 4 groups are multicultural, functional diversity, gender, LGBT, and language diversity. 1, immigrants and their children, 18%, disabled and functional problems, 15%. If you ask the organizations, maybe different. LGBT plus 7%, and language diversity. So with the new language law, this hasn't been reduced. So this is a very important area for us. Regarding language, everybody speak about diversity and inclusion. So some people say this is not a positive term because you say implicit that these persons are excluded to begin with. Well, belonging is that your voice is being heard. We invite everybody to NRK party, and with the universal design, people get in. And what we really want is that they should get out on the dance floor and dance if they were alone, home alone party. And it's important that we have the proper entrance to that. So we try to exchange inclusion with belonging where we can, because word is important, language is important. So I will say something about the competence of diversity. We say that this means, or to be able to have a language, to have a perspective or network. And you can have one of them, both, or all three. And there are two kinds of such competence. This is competence that people don't choose themselves, and that you live it every day. Like take myself as an example. A woman and a Norwegian, that's inherent. And then it's competence that you have obtained. For example, I know sign language because my mother is deaf. But I can never compete with my mother to lead a life as a deaf. That's a big difference. So, for example, inherent competence, we should mirror that competence. But this is a big job. We should recruit this diversity competence, and we should also, not at least, lift and strengthen the ones who already work with us. It will take time, and while we work with this recruitment, we have to be conscious regarding our own adapted competence and our content in design, in products, because there is power in diversity, and when you actively use it, we'll get new histories, new perspective, new products, new services. We have seen that already. So diversity should come in as a natural and obvious part. Disabled organization has said nothing about us without us. If we produce something for these groups, it's important to include them. It's not because we have to, but it's because they will lift the quality. This is our experience. Now, during the catastrophe in Syria, when we have Jasmal, Wolasmal, we get the true stories from a perspective that we all need. Very good for our content. And we have digital availability, accessibility. Christopher, who is blind, you saw him on the video. He's here today, so he's very good at designing this. And to this framework for diversity, one vision for target picture, 12 main measures. So the vision should be about the future, should give direction. And me as a project leader should be able to have it on my tombstone. That's a message to my family. Together we create a Norway where everybody belongs. To reach this vision, we use the power of diversity. B, diversity is visible and obvious in NRK's content. C, NRK is available for or accessible for everybody, both physical and digital. G, in NRK, everybody can be themselves and experience belonging. We have 200 concrete measures. We reduce them to 12. We don't have the time for that, but we can share with anybody who have special interest. Since we're here at Doga, we believe that accessibility is very important, and you already saw that in the video, but I will briefly show you some new things. Maskorama, a good example of an NRK party where we invite everybody. I also thought about universal design. We had a good contrast, buttons, picture description for people, for blind people, and that everybody can vote. That doesn't come automatically. And we have recently developed something NRK Sense, which currently being opened. It's quite fresh. So next time, if you invite me, I will tell you more. This is also about universal design. I will show you a little. has to do with letters and fonts, size of letters, colors. And we have something called the Bang, which is a new way of telling a story. It's both auditive and visual. And here the story is has a content. No matter if so people who can't see, they get the sound. People who can't hear, they get the picture. Very good animated picture. In addition to that, everybody can join. You can ignite this lamp, and you can kill some ants if you want to do that. So find that and have a look. It's called Smelle, or the Bang in English.
Her historien sett med hans øyne. Smelle.
Also a story about some Norwegian boy igniting a bomb and under a mosque during Ramadan. And the story is about he tells his story about him growing up. It is challenging. It's challenging. It's challenging to have such accessibility to everything we produce, but we're well ahead. So I would like to share at the end a list of things to remember. Be curious, open, respect. Very important as a basic principle. So the biggest journey for me is this thing about majority. Is surprised that I didn't think about this before I got 50, so that I belong to the majority. So maybe when I get to Oslo, I travel from Moss every morning. When I get to Oslo, yes, I'm not really the majority, but I have belonged to the majority all my life. What does this mean? Everything is arranged for me. So if you're a minority, as Sumik mentioned, if you are a minority, what's that? Yes, so continually getting discriminated, physical obstacles, low expectation, and a lot of prejudice, attitudes, and this is quite important. So when I am in the majority, be conscious regarding your power. Be conscious of your privileges and your power. Check your blind zones. Who don't you hear? Who can't you see? Big, small, leadership. Remember, nothing about us without us. Simply not because it's a law, but it increases the quality. Next, better to do something than nothing. We have to lean forward and do even the small thing. We cannot leave that just to Schibsted or any company. And many are afraid of abusing with words, or we have to think of words, how we express ourselves. And we have to get better asking for feedback and to listen to them when we get them, because it's allowed to make mistakes, but not again, and again. And so finally, but not at least, remember to celebrate progress, because this job will take time. So if we're going to succeed, we have to change the cultural behavior, attitude. In the diversity project in NRK, we have experienced the big anarchy are very positive and ready to work with this. And it's a here vision that we have, and we will not able to reach that alone in NRK. If we should reach that, both the public and the private commercial Norway, everybody had to contribute. And we hope you want to join that. If there's somebody who can join with this vision in all of the world, it's we in Norway. Together we create a Norway where everybody belongs or feel belonging. Heartily thank you, Siri. That was a great inspiration. Lot of things that you have to digest. But now we will have a sofa discussion. And ask everybody else, so me, Thomas, Nima, Siri, I will invite you back. I will invite you to this nice planet. Cheers. Something for you, Nima. Yes, please. We will listen to discussion and reflections in exchange.
Now I think you're in more of an HR role, right? So do you think, is there anything that designers can learn from other disciplines that is useful to bring into DI and inclusive design?
Yeah. So I worked with the innovation and business development in some of my previous jobs, and what I see in this, which I already mentioned, is that I think design thinking has actually integrated diversity and inclusion in it if you use it properly. But I think we tend to take sort of shortcuts, so we don't sort of include it when we develop products or services or processes. And just one example of that is I spoke about the news media area, and one thing that I thought about when I joined Schibsted is my father, because when I grew up he used to subscribe to Aftenposten. At some point of time he quit that subscription, and I've been thinking about that when I joined Schibsted, because he's now retired and he sits watching Indian news all the time, and he and his friends sends this fake news things on WhatsApp to each other all the day. And the reason why I think it's relevant is because all his friends and the elder sort of multicultural generation, I think, sits like that. So the question I've been asking is like, okay, what do we know about my dad in Aftenposten or other organization? What do we know about him and users like him? Do they subscribe to our products, use our products? Do they read the newspaper, Aftenposten? If they don't, is it because the language is difficult? Is it because the cases are irrelevant? Or is it because elder, multicultural people just tie more stronger to the roots when they grow older? And the answer I get from all the organizations I go to is that we don't know. So we know a lot about our existing users, and we don't know so much about our potential user. So when I talk to the Insight and the team, we've been sort of challenging them on finding this data, and they would sort of develop, yeah, let's interview them. And then my sort of question or reminder to them has been, but you can typically go to my father and say, you know, you don't subscribe to Aftenposten, is it because it's expensive? And he would say, no, of course not, I have a lot of money. Like an Indian guy, because the Indian guy would never sort of admit that he doesn't have the money. So you need to understand the context, and that's the desirability part. So I can say that this is the diversity and inclusion, the starting point of a product development, or you could call it just very good design thinking. And I think just applying the same methodology, which we are doing now in inclusive recruitment, inclusive designing, inclusive recruitment processes, you could just copy-paste that and put that in the product development, and you would get better products and maybe potential new users. And I don't want to sort of talk so much about the profitability, because I think the profitability will come automatically if you just start understanding your potential users better.
Yeah, fantastic. So good design practice, get out there and get to know people. Yeah. Moving on, I think Doga believes that inclusive design needs more attention at an executive level in organizations. So I was wondering, Thomas, you being the CEO, right? Or something?
Sort of.
C-level at least in Vestre, yeah.
Wise, yeah.
Wise CEO in Vestre. Can you say a little bit about sort of the leadership, the role of leadership, and perhaps also a little bit about how you use inclusive design strategically in Vestre?
For us, it's a bit, we don't discuss it so much. It's more like how we are, I think, because we are like small family business. So it's more like, but now we grow, and I learned a lot today, and I think we have a lot of potential to do much better, do much more, and also have much more focus on this when we develop new products and everything, when we recruit new members of the team or the family, as we say. So I think for me it's been a really good day just to, because we have a focus on it, but we don't have a focus on it, if you understand. Because it's, for us investors, it's really important to go from talking to action. And I think here we have some potential to do some more action. So
I'll take that as an opportunity to shamelessly promote the inclusive design framework. It's, you say we're not thinking about it, we just do it. That means it's company culture, right? Which is part of the point with the inclusive design framework. You need to also think about your company culture. It's an important fundament for what you do in your practices, right? Yeah. Good. And Samit, you said something about profitable, and you also talked about that. I talked about that. I think we're all we're curious about the money in this. So Stina, maybe you want to cover the value of inclusive design. And potentially we'd also like to know, is there such thing as a free lunch? Is there idealism? Will anyone really do it if it doesn't pay off?
Well, I mean, I think we've all talked about it, and you said profitability will come, so twofold. There is a proven business value of inclusive design. We talked about it in having the diversity, equity, and inclusion in the teams and in the leadership. So in our research, we have it on gender and equity. We should have it in other parts as well. And also then the second part of the first part is that it's also then a proven case that more diverse, equitable and inclusive teams will also have more innovative solutions and products and therefore have a higher growth potential and maybe even more so capture not the existing growth curve but sort of the future ones, if you get my point. And then what I think specifically the last speakers, very, very important, the business case for increasing who you're designing for. Basically, you're increasing your user and your customer segment. So per se, you will also then have a business case that has a larger potential segment. So sorry for that very mechanic answer on profitability. But then I would also like to add, I think that if you don't include the perspectives of sustainability today in this discussion, I think it's the business case in the future might not be so great.
Fantastic. And from such a big player and with a management consulting background of McKinsey, I think it would be awesome if you came up with something that could help all the rest of us as designers and design leaders to actually measure the value of inclusive design in our own projects.
Challenge accepted.
Yes, hooray. All right, Nima, you've been in inclusive design for 10 years. By the way, I think I invented a new expression today. I've been sort of thinking about jumping after Wirkola. For me now, as a new expression is talking after Nima. That was not a welcome surprise, but you did really well. Super interesting to hear about it. So having been at this for 10 years, and you seem to be really passionate about this, and also you've been in Design It, which is kind of a forerunner and a beacon in inclusive design in Norway. How have you seen the evolution up until now? And possibly also, what are your thoughts for the evolution ahead of us?
Yeah, the evolution ahead is super interesting because I was talking to this company a couple of days ago about the potential of universal design in the future, and this company, which I won't mention the name of, was saying, there are big corporates solving problems in the realms of universal design, which takes us out of business. And my response to that was no, because universal design is something that is constantly under development and is constantly implemented into new parts of the world and businesses. But I think the future of universal design is, let's think about it in a basic manner, right? Universal design is about inclusion, including as many people as we can, as many types of people we can, and don't create these archetypes, right? In the end, it will also end up in a sustainability thing, because universal design will also include us with the nature around us and the faunas and the animal kingdom and so on and so forth. It's all about coexisting, right, in the end. So we need to create a world where we can coexist among each other as humans, but also with nature. That's also part of the future of universal design, I think.
Yeah, nice. Totally agree. Nice words. And that also goes back to the business value, right? If we can't make a business value out of it, it's not sustainable, right? Sustainability is, the broadened perspective of sustainability is super interesting. All right, I think we should sort of move on to the takeaway for the audience, right? What do we all want people to leave this day with and take home to their own companies? Siri, I think you've some ideas and things you've done already.
A lot of wise stuff has been said, but I think the most important thing is find your blind spots. Find your blind spots in your company, in your products, in your leader groups or whatever, and fill them with the diversity that you are missing. And most of all, you have to talk to the people. When you find the blind spots, you have to talk with the people with lived experience, not assume that you know what they need. I think that's the most important thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Other thoughts?
Just one thing that I always have a dream. When I meet a designer, I will have one big request, and that is that I've never been to a presentation, been on a stage, and had this microphone that fits my turban or my skin color. Can somebody here just fix that? You'll have at least one customer.
That's something for Schibsted's startup lab, isn't it? Yes, no, totally. I think these were fantastic notes from you guys. Thank you so much. Be seated, yes?
But what about you, Hågen? Do you have a takeaway, something, advice to the audience today? Final words?
Yeah, it's definitely what I talked about in our speech. Take a strategic approach to it. Think of this as a process. It's something that takes time, right? Because one thing is what you can do specifically in one project, but there's also what you can do systematically. And that takes a systematic approach to change management in your organization. Now, I think we have designers are in a completely different situation now than like 20 years ago when I started my career. We have a lot of designers now in senior leadership positions where you actually need to think of organizational change and change management.
Absolutely. Change management is a keyword too. And just get started, I think. Like you also talked about, Stina. Okay. Det har vært en spennende...
It has been a very interesting day. I hope you feel the same. I've learned a lot. I know that the lectures even have picked up something. I hope it has been inspiring. I have something that will happen in the future I want to inform you about. This designer innovation program, and companies get financial support where designers are involved in design project at an early stage. So don't miss this. The 16th of March, we have War of the Doga Mark. You probably know that. Look for, you wouldn't want to miss that. And the 17th of April, we open application form for universal design. And just as something to stretch, I can mention that last year WIPS won, and if somebody really proved universal design in world class, it's them. So I want to thank the lecturers. It's been great to listen to all of you. I want to make a short summary, lift this up to a strategic level, start to think conscious and comprehensive, take the first step. This is what it's all about. Use your head, your heart, your hands, and show action. Thank you heartily for today. And have a nice trip home.